Hey, we're going to go ahead and continue. Since we lost a class, I don't want to lose that day completely because we have a lot of material. So we're going to pick up where we left off. Where we left off, we finished last time factoring trinomials. Here's in red up here an example of what we just completed. And so you can see that, and this is a minus sign, not a multiplication, that we factored this trinomial by first recognizing there was no number in front of the x squared term. And so our method was we looked for factors of the last term, the minus 35, that multiply to that, but add to the negative 2, to the b term. And so the correct combination would be a negative 7 and 5. They multiply to negative 32. They add to negative 2. Once we find that combination, those two numbers become the second number in each binomial. Okay, so pretty simple. Now, what happens when there is a number in front of the x squared term other than the implied 1? And so you can see that A represents that coefficient of the x squared term. C is the constant value. And what we are looking at is that A does not factor out. And so we can't use the same method that we did up here because of that value of A. And so this is going to be called the AC method. And the AC gives you the clue as to how to begin this because AC, these two letters imply multiplication. And the A term, the A represents the coefficient of the square term, the C represents the constant value. And so the first thing that you do in the AC method is you're going to multiply those numbers. So let's just take a look at the way this works. I'm going to just dismiss these boxes as we go along. So step one is when you recognize that you cannot get rid of that coefficient in front of the square term, and it's a trinomial, you're going to do the AC method. So what are we going to do? First, we're going to multiply A times C, and that gives us a 6. The rest of this is going to be really a combination of what you already know. So once we have determined A times C is 6, we're going to do the same thing we did with trinomials. We're going to be looking for numbers that multiply to this value 6, but add to the B value, in this case, the 7. Okay, so we can see that 6 times 1 is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7. So this is the combination we're going to use. Now, the trick here is what do we do with it? Well, what we are going to do is we're going to rewrite that middle term. That middle term is this 7x. We're going to rewrite that as two terms. We're going to break it into two terms using the 6 and the 1 as the coefficients of the x terms. So let me just go ahead and eliminate this block. And you can see that I have my first term is unchanged, the 2x squared, right? No change. But the 6x and the plus 1x is really 7x. I broke that 7x up into two different terms, and then I brought down the plus 3, the original. Well, now how many terms do I have? I have 4. We already know how to group or factor 4 terms. We're going to do it by grouping. So at this point, it should be familiar territory. I'll go ahead and eliminate the box, but we're going to group that polynomial. And so in the first term, first grouping, the common factor is 2x. In the second grouping, you have to pull out a factor. Well, 1 is always going to be a common factor, and that's the only thing that there is. So when I group this, 2x is my common factor of the first. And when I divide those terms by 2x, I'm left with the x plus 3 right here. So here's the full factorization of this first grouping. And then if I pull out the 1, what's left is still the x plus 3. So there is the factorization. And now I have these two terms. Well, here the greatest common factor of these two terms is going to be x plus 3. So what do? I do the same thing. I'll go ahead and divide out the x plus 3's, which is the common factor. And what remains is going to be the 2x plus 1. Again, we've done this. And so there is the full factorization. So A lot of familiar steps, just slightly different. Okay, so let's do another one. I'll walk through it, and then I'm going to have you practice. You're going to pause the video. Okay, so here we have 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. We notice that we do have a term or a coefficient in front of the x squared term that does not factor out. So for now, we're going to go ahead and employ the AC method. A times C, in this case, is going to be 18. So what do? We're now looking for factors of 18 that add up to 11. Okay, so 18, 9 times 2 is 18, and 9 plus 2 is 11. So there's my combination. What do? I rewrite my middle term, my 11x, using the 9 and the 2. So I'll do that, and you can see once again that I haven't really changed anything. This is still 11x. I've just broken it apart. I've got 4 terms, right? So I'm going to factor by grouping. You know, what is the common factor in this first group? It's going to be 3x. The second group, it's going to be 2. So when I do my grouping and remove that greatest common factor, well, I just kind of rewrote it again. When I do the division, the 3x comes out front, and what was left after the division is going to be x plus 3. And likewise, when I divide by 2, pull out that common factor, what's left is x plus 3. The x plus 3 is the common factor in these two terms. So I'll pull that out as the greatest common factor. What was left? 3x and the plus 2. And again, you can always check it by using FOIL, right? To see that you get your original polynomial back. Okay, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pause the video. Okay, you should have these notes printed out, but pause the video. Here are 3 problems that you can work. I'm going to wait just a few seconds, and then I'm just going to go ahead and kind of reveal these particular problems. Okay, hopefully you paused it and worked the problem. So let's take a look at this first one. Again, the only method I should attempt is AC because I have that 4 that I cannot factor out. 4 times 3 is 12. So factors of 12 that add to 13 is going to be 12 and 1. So I break this into 4 terms. I then group, and there is my solution. Okay, I'm not going to explain every detail. You should be able to follow this. Okay, this next problem, again, it is going to be the AC method because nothing can factor out. 6 times a negative 35 is a negative 210. I'm looking for factors of negative 210 that add up to negative 11. Well, since it ends in a 0, 210 ends in a 0, I know that it's divisible by 10. So my first attempt is negative 21 times 10, and that happens to be the right combination. Sometimes you just have to get a calculator out and divide when these numbers are big to look for factors to multiply to 210 or negative 210, but add to that middle term. So there's my combination. So I rewrite this as 4 terms. I then group, pull out the greatest common factors. I get the 2x minus 7 as a common factor, and then I finish it off. Okay. Last one. And by now, I hope you get the rhythm of it. You just got to learn it by practicing it, right? There's nothing difficult about this conceptually. You just got to know what the steps are. So again, I cannot factor out that 5 out of this because it doesn't divide into 14 or 8. So therefore, the AC method, I'm looking for factors of 40. A times C is 40 that add to 14. That would be the 10 and 4. Break the middle term, 14x into 2 terms, 10x plus 4x. I now group, pull out the greatest common factors, and there is the solution. Okay. So that concludes factoring trinomials. Okay, so complete the homework for factoring trinomials. I'm going to end this video. I'll do another one for the next section. Okay, good luck.